and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. My name is Peter Counter and I am the editor-in-chief of FindBiometrics, where we are throwing the spotlight on the most exciting and controversial biometric modality, facial recognition. That's why on this latest episode of ID Talk, I am pleased to present FindBiometrics President Peter O'Neill's recent interview with Kevin Allen Tussy, CEO of FaceTec. The interview begins on the topic of FaceTec's ongoing 5-tier spoof bounty, which was raised to a full potential payout of $100,000 earlier this year. The discussion goes on to perhaps the most pressing issue in face biometrics, the distinction between authentication and surveillance technology. It concludes with a review of FaceTec's 2020, touching on how COVID-19 has affected the market, a progress report on the company's technology, and a preview of what's to come. It's a fascinating conversation between two biometrics and identity industry thought leaders. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to present FindBiometrics President Peter O'Neill in conversation with FaceTec CEO Kevin Allen Tussy right here on the ID Talk podcast.
Hello, my name is Peter O'Neill and I am the president of FindBiometrics and Mobile ID World, and I'm very pleased to be speaking with one of our industry's leading facial recognition companies. I'm joined today on this episode of ID Talk podcast by Kevin Allen Tussy, who is the CEO of FaceTec. Welcome, Kevin. Always a pleasure to discuss our industry with you.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. It's always good to be here.
Okay, so let's jump right in. This summer, FaceTec, the first and currently only biometric security company to launch a spoof bounty, has enhanced its programming, upping the ante to a total of $100,000. Quite remarkable, and adding 2 more advanced levels of presentation attack coverage. What are the benefits of spoof bounty in contrast to other forms of liveness detection assurance, like, for example, sanction testing?
Well, Peter, the most important thing for liveness detection and for cybersecurity, biometric cybersecurity in general, is to ensure that the technology will work in the real world. So, while sanction testing and laboratory testing is very important, it's a great first step. Really, you don't know what you don't know. You're not sure exactly how things are going to perform on tens of thousands of different types of devices with different camera resolutions, different types of sensors, different lenses, all different kinds of combinations of OSs, browsers, all these different combinations that can create issues in real world security situations. So for FaceTec, once we had passed the highest levels of available pad testing, we wanted to take our technology and put it out into the real world and see what real hackers, real competitors, people from intelligence agencies and those types of folks could do when we actually gave them access to our technology to try to spoof it, to try to attack it. So first we rolled out with the level 1 through 3 presentation attack detection spoof bounty program, and that was quite successful for us. And then we added levels 4 and 5, which are template tampering and video injection attacks. And these are more on the cybersecurity side of liveness detection, but they ensure that the device is not compromised in some way, that the camera is not being bypassed. The goal of the liveness detection is really to determine that we have a live individual, human, who is in front of the camera at the time that the biometric data is captured. And so we want that first generation capture to be ensured. And by doing the liveness checks and on level 1 through 3 presentation attack artifacts, and doing the level 4 and 5 checks to make sure that the camera feed is secure, we have the absolute best way to determine that the individual is live and in front of the camera at the time that biometric data is captured.
Well, you've really raised the bar with the level 4 and 5 now, including decrypting and tampering with the biometric data, decryption, camera bypasses, and video injection. These are really cutting edge attack vectors as we see it. And why is it so important to include these types of more advanced types of attacks?
You're absolutely right. These are advanced attacks, but they're also the most scalable type of attacks. So whereas a hacker, spoofer might try to go get some masks or some kind of artifacts. It's much easier for them and a lot cheaper for them just to try to inject some digital video or create a deepfake puppet and inject that feed into the authentication application rather than have the biometric data be coming from a live human. It's actually coming from a recorded video with a virtual camera or some type of piece of software. So this is incredibly important for us not just to look at presentation attacks, artifacts, masks, videos, photos, but to look at these other attack vectors that could give access to the video feed and would allow a bad actor to defeat the entire liveness application or technology by injecting this video. And unfortunately, there are server-side solutions that are being sold in the market today that really don't have any ability to detect whether or not the camera feed has been compromised. So if you're just taking a selfie on a device and you're sending it up to a server-side, let's say passive liveness detection solution, you have no idea whether or not that image has been injected into the application, or if it was actually captured by the application correctly in a secure way from the live human. So we have to have a device SDK on the device side, whether that's a PC, or a laptop or a smart device, to ensure that we can have confidence that the camera feed is actually indeed secure and hasn't been tampered with.
And Kevin, how many people have tried to spoof your FaceTec 3D face authentication to date? And what have you learned from the bounty program after, I think you've been at it now for a full year of being a public target out there with $100,000 bounty? How is it going?
Oh, it's going great. We've learned a lot over the last year. I think we've had now north of 40,000 different spoof attacks, all different types, coming in from all over the world. Many from places like Russia and China, many from executives at competitors, competitive vendors of ours that have a lot of experience in this area, as well as people who are in the AI and virtual reality spheres as well. So we've learned a lot. We've actually had 2 people who've been able to spoof our technology in the last year, 2 different individuals. We paid them their bounties and we worked on shoring up the vulnerabilities that we had. We were able to do that, and that was about, the last one was about 6 months ago now, I think. And we've been successful at defending the spoof bounty program ever since we've raised it up to $100,000, and we continue to do that to continue to attract attention to the platform. And it's what really allows us to have confidence in our technology, knowing that we're drawing the fire. We're really bringing all of the attacks to us, and our customers and our partners don't have to be the guinea pigs, so to speak, for spoof attacks. We're going to be on the cutting edge of that. We're going to reward people who come to us and have some kind of novel way to beat our liveness detection. Doesn't happen very often, but if it does, we always learn from it. We rebuild our technology to mitigate those threats, and we release a much stronger product and service after we've learned what vulnerabilities might be out there. And we're unaware of any better way to learn about real world security than just to put the technology out 24/7, 365, and let anyone attack it from anywhere in the world. And this is what gives us confidence, and it's one of the reasons why our partners and our customers have so much confidence in our technology.
And it certainly is groundbreaking in our industry. So congratulations on that. Can you please tell us, just generally some of the advantages and disadvantages of 3D face matching versus 2D?
Well, if we look back a couple years now, Apple made a very wise decision to use 3D face authentication in their Face ID product for their iPhones, and prior to that, FaceTec really had 3 different points of contention that we had to overcome to get a customer to use our technology. First, it was which biometric should we use? So fingerprint was obviously the most widely used of the biometrics at the time prior to Face ID. So we had to overcome why you should use face as the biometric instead of fingerprint, and then Apple came out with Face ID, and of course then it was, face is probably the de facto new standard of biometric authentication, so we should use face. And then it was whether or not someone should use 3D or 2D face matching. And Face ID uses a 3D infrared camera, and the reasons why it uses that are really twofold. One, to have more accuracy for matching, and to have the accuracy work in low lighting conditions, and of course also to minimize bias. Infrared doesn't use visible light, so it's not effective the same way as normal cameras are. So Apple's very smart to use 3D face matching in their technology, and that's why their phones are so successful with unlocking very quickly and in the dark and with all different phenotypes of human skin tones. And so FaceTec is exactly the same as far as using 3D versus 2D to get the same benefits that Face ID has, except for FaceTec uses a 100% software solution. Rather than using an infrared camera that requires special hardware, FaceTec uses a measurement of perspective distortion of how a face bends as the camera gets slightly closer to the face to essentially reverse engineer a 3D face map from those video frames. And when we do that, we end up with some real significant benefits over 2D matching. Because we have that perspective distortion information, we know how the face bends, we can extrapolate out what a face is going to look like from selfie distance to, for example, government ID distance, capture distance. And this is really important when you're doing face verification to either an ID document or to a government database. So our matching levels for 3D to 2D are extremely high. Our new face portrait API is 1 in 950,000 false accept rate at less than 1% false reject rate. These are extremely high numbers when compared to normal 2D to 2D matching. And we have less bias. We really don't have any observable bias when we're doing 3D to 3D face map matching, because we're not using the little micro details on the face like wrinkles and moles and these types of scars or things like that to give us our matching data, like 2D is using heavily relying on those things. Our 3D matching is relying on the shape of the face, and so as long as we have enough light being emitted from the screen that it's reflecting off of the the key points on the individual's facial structure, we can reverse engineer the perspective distortion into a 3D face map, and then we have a lot higher performance in matching accuracy, as well as a lot less bias than we're going to have with normal 2D to 2D matching.
Catfishing is a serious danger to the online dating community. When arranging to meet a new person, nothing is more important than trust. And unless a dating app can ensure that its platform is free of abusers and fraudsters, it's not worth the risk. That's why the meet group's Meet.com uses FaceTec 3D face authentication for its profile verification badge. With AI-enhanced biometrics supported by industry-lauded liveness detection, FaceTec is helping the Meet Group provide the safest dating platforms ever offered. Backed by the world's only Spoof bounty with rewards up to $100,000, FaceTec 3D face authentication is the biometric security you can reliably trust to prove and verify identity where and when it matters most. Learn more about how FaceTec is putting an end to fraud at FaceTec.com. And now, back to the podcast.
Okay, and I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the major forces affecting the biometric industry right now. And one is the conflation between facial recognition for surveillance and face-based authentication. This is particularly difficult timing for the public, I think, as increased privacy awareness is intersecting with lack of fundamentals around really how biometrics work, and it's throwing roadblocks up against authentication. From your perspective, what is at the core of this misunderstanding, and how do you define identity today?
Yeah, that's a real challenge for our industry. The term facial recognition is so ubiquitous that it's really all-encompassing for anything that has to do with images of individuals and then matching them to some other individual images of individuals' faces. And from our perspective, we really are looking at trying to separate the two, or the terminology, so that we would use facial recognition for surveillance, which is really identifying someone potentially when they don't know that they're being identified. So you're just searching for biometric data in a large data set and trying to get high match percentages against someone in a data set, and then believing that to some level of confidence that this is the individual Authentication or verification is really the individual purporting to be someone and then verifying whether or not they are indeed that person to a high level of confidence based on some trusted piece of biometric data. So in the identity proofing industry, companies that are taking some selfie capture of biometric data of the face and then comparing it to 2D photo that's on a driver's license or a passport, this is being used as the anchor for this user-provided identity document. I think what we're going to see in the future is going to be biometric data that's captured on a device and then passed potentially through an intermediary that does a liveness check, and then see that biometric data re-encrypted and then passed directly to a government identity issuer via an API, and then the government issuer will do the matching. They'll look up, for example, my social security number or my driver's license number, and they will find the 2D photos that have been stored in that record for my legal identity, and then they'll match the new liveness proven 3D face map to those 2D photos. And if they match very highly, they'll return the match decision of yes back to the bank or back to the private company that's trying to establish an identity verification for me. And in that way, we wouldn't really be trusting any user provided ID document or biometric data. We're just collecting it, knowing that we have a strong liveness signal from that first person collection and then matching against trusted data on the government side. So we like that solution. We think that it's the best for privacy, that architecture. In that way, the government doesn't ever have to share any biometric data outside with any private organizations. It's just biometric data coming into the government. And they also are able to upgrade their databases from, with our technology, from 2D photos to 3D face maps. And we're seeing a lot of interest in that from governments around the world, and we have some commitments from some governments to actually roll out technology with that architecture for their citizens and to provide remote identity verification services to public and private organizations and entities with that model.
Well, thanks, Kevin. We see education as critical in this whole area as well. Conversations like this, where it's clearly explained and what the differences are. And on the positive side, digital transformation is occurring everywhere very rapidly, and general cybersecurity awareness seems to be elevating major governments, corporate, across the board interest in biometric authentication. What new sectors do you see opening up in the good news of liveness enhanced biometric security?
Well, hopefully the explanations are clear. I'm trying my best to make them digestible. Some of these are challenging topics to break down succinctly and to make understandable, but I do think that when you really can grasp the fact that liveness detection is the true replacement for the individual who has been specifically tasked with saying someone is there present in person, like a bank teller or a notary or someone who's overseeing a ballot box or something like that. These are really what liveness detection replaces. So in a remote scenario, when I want to prove my identity from my home and there's no TSA agent there's no individual who's looking over my shoulder, making sure that I'm not presenting some artifact to the camera or I'm not injecting some video into a software program. That's really what the liveness detection is doing. It's giving us some high assurance that the capture of the biometric data is being done in a way that is legitimate and it's not fraudulent. So that opens up all kinds of new remote credentialing, remote verification use cases that really we haven't had in the past. So things like voting, things like applying for loans, applying for government benefits, these types of things are going to be able to be done remotely and without the fraud that you would see if you were to just allow people to apply for these things or to participate in these types of scenarios without having some level of confidence that it is an individual, a live human that is doing it, and it's the same human who's maybe coming back to the account over and over again. So I think COVID has shown that there's a huge need for digital transformation. Everyone now has to access all of their confidential information that maybe they were only able to get at the office or at the government agency. Now they have to be able to do it from home. We need to do so many of these tasks remotely now, and we do need to really elevate this conversation from just facial recognition or facial verification to truly to biometric cybersecurity, and understand what level of confidence and security we need to have in our remote access systems so that we can actually consider them secure in a way that somehow rivals what we were doing in person in past years.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the pandemic and COVID and how it's affecting. I know that we chatted, I think it was about a year ago. It might have been at one of the Money 2020 shows, and talking about some of the rapidly growing trends we were seeing, whether it be healthcare or just remote working, and all of a sudden, everybody is faced with this increasing demand to try and come up with solutions because COVID has just forced this on us. So, I think FaceTec fits very well into that spectrum.
Strong digital identity is a powerful tool, enabling safe, secure, and convenient healthcare, banking, pension collection, remote work, and government services. But its full potential can only be achieved with advanced, third-party certified liveness detection. With FaceTec and integration partner Gulf Data International, the United Arab Emirates are leading the way to groundbreaking regional digital identity programs. With strong digital identity verification, exceptional liveness detection, and biometric deduplication capabilities, FaceTec 3D face authentication ensures that exceptionally secure digital identity in the UAE will be fraud-free and always easy to use. Backed by the world's only Spoof bounty, with rewards up to $100,000, FaceTec 3D face authentication is the biometric security you can reliably trust to prove and verify identity where and when it matters most. Learn more about how FaceTec is putting an end to fraud at facetec.com. And now, back to the podcast.
Let me ask you from a technology standpoint. I know that you are constantly evolving. I'm always very impressed with you're constantly moving ahead. What's the current state of your technology beyond the liveness part?
Yeah, we definitely spend a lot of our time on R&D, and we're really an R&D company. We don't have really a huge sales force. We work through channel partners, and they distribute our technology on 6 continents all over the world now. Got about 50 different partners that are working in that capacity with us. So we do like to focus on R&D, and we are consistently working on upgrading our technology. So fundamentally, we believe that trust in any remote authentication or verification is coming from initially stems from the liveness detection. But things like the level 4 and 5 attack vectors that we added to our Spoof Bounty program, those are some of the additional pieces of the cybersecurity puzzle that need to be added to any of these systems and the architectures to make sure that the entire system can be trusted. But we're really working on a lot of things behind the scenes for things like optical character recognition for driver's licenses and passports, opening the NFC chips that are present in many of the passports to get access to the photos there, and being able to authenticate the 3D user and match them against the 2D image that's in their passport. We're also working a tremendous amount on what we call 1 to N for deduplication. Don't want to get too deep into this right now, but really we see that there are 2 layers of identity, really the what we call the biometric layer of identity, which is pretty much what we're born with. It comes from our DNA and is influenced by our environment. And then we have the legal identity layer, and that's what the government has agreed to call us and give us ID numbers, and that's our legal name. So 1 to N biometric search for deduplication is a way to provide an assurance that we don't have multiple individuals in a database with the same live person potentially in a database with multiple accounts under different names. So if we don't have access to the source data, or we can't send biometric data to a government to have it checked against the legal identity, then the best other option is to do what we call this one-to-N search for deduplication to find out if that 3D face map of that individual has been ever been used under a different name or to get a different account. So this is very difficult. It requires extremely high accuracy, and that is something that fortunately FaceTec has been able to derive from its 3D face maps much better than any of the 2D to 2D matching providers that are out there. And so we have an advantage in this space because of our accuracy, and it's something that we've been working on, and we provide it to quite a few customers now, including some social networks that are looking to prevent multiple accounts. We don't want to have bots to be able to get accounts, and that's great because we can stop that with our liveness detection. But we also don't want an individual to be able to go in and get 50 different accounts and then pretend like they're all in separate accounts. So for this social media company, they actually utilize our one-to-N search to ensure that their account holders have one account and one account only. And it's a very powerful new way to ensure that we have one user and one account without having to invoke the government legal identity into the process.
Boy, I see that as a critical component, especially when I think of health insurance and things like that, where people do scam the system, with multiple different personalities. So that's a critical area. And can we look at the future a bit right now? And you and I have, again, discussed this in the past, but I'm always very interested to see, where you think the biometric industry is evolving in the next few years. 3 to 5 years down the road, what are we going to be looking at?
Well, my perspective is we're going to be looking at a lot less knowledge-based authentication and a lot more biometric verification. I think we're going to start to see that all the companies that have a long-term roadmap are going to be introducing remote onboarding systems, and they're going to be then extrapolating those out into remote authentication systems that use biometrics. And we're going to be using our digital identities with a much enhanced ability to prove who we are from any device to essentially any agency, government agency or private company, in a way that also protects our privacy and enables us to have all the the benefits and be granted credentials and have all the privileges that come along with being us, but doing that in a remote way. I think it'll just become ubiquitous. Biometrics will be entwined with everything that we do and how we prove who we are on pretty much every level.
And it's happening way faster now than it did pre-pandemic.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And how can people get in touch with you to learn more about FaceTec, liveness, and the Spoof bounty?
It's really easy, facetec.com, no H, FACETEC.com. We also operate a website that we like to use to educate people in the industry, potential customers, additional vendors in the space, people who are looking to get into this industry, partners, and as well as the media at liveness.com.
Well, Kevin, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. I'm always so impressed with the depth of knowledge that you have about this particularly very interesting and high growth area in our industry. Thank you very much for carving out some time with us today.
Thank you, Peter. It's my pleasure. Great to talk with you and look forward to doing it again soon.
And so concludes the ID Talk interview with Kevin Allen Tussy, CEO of FaceTec. To learn more about the topics and technology discussed in this episode, visit facetec.com. And to learn more about FaceTec's $100,000 spoof bounty, check out spoofbounty.com. Thank you to Kevin for joining us today on ID Talk, and thank you to Peter O'Neill for conducting the interview. Our podcast theme music is by Logomrad. I have been your host, Peter Counter. Thank you for listening to the ID Talk podcast.